Okay, Gold Derby fans, we are here to talk about the Emmy race for Best Limited Series. I love this race this year. There's a lot of really good products in here. And at Gold Derby, we have our first experts predictions as of today, May 1st. And Tom O'Neill, what are they predicting for Limited Series?
Well, at this point, we only have 4 experts piping in. This is the first day that they're piping in. We'll have as many as 30 or 40 over time. Lynette Rice of Entertainment Weekly thinks it's going to be Feud. Robert Rourke of the New York Post said the winner will be The Night Of. And our executive editor here, Paul Sheehan, and Matt Jacobs of HuffPo both say it will be Big Little Lies. Now, I think any of those things can happen, but I think that also in the running here is Fargo. I've seen the first 3 or 4 episodes, and it is magnificent. The quality has stayed up. I think it's seriously in the running, but the Night Of has some strong support here, as does Genius, the Nat Geo special, which is quite good. So we have some formidable contenders.
And ABC has a pair this year. They have American Crime and they have When We Rise as well.
That's right. That's right. And they're really pushing American Crime, which had steady support at the Emmys.
Yeah, they had a great Emmy event this weekend, and the entire cast was there. 10 people were there, so it was a sold out crowd and lots of nice free food and drinks. It was a fun night.
Does anybody have a strong feeling of the winner here, or the front runner?
I think when you just recounted everything, Tom, and I'm predicting Big Little Lies, but then I'm thinking, yeah, Nat Geo, this sort of channel that's getting into scripted fare. And Chris, I mean, you've covered that extensively. Tell everyone the pedigree of the people involved in Genius, of the biography of Albert Einstein.
Yeah, it's Ron Howard and Brian Grazer behind it, and they just won a Grammy a few weeks ago. So they're at the ego stage, we call it. They only need a Tony Award. They've already got Emmy Awards. And then Jeffrey Rush, another one close to EGOT, is Albert Einstein in the later years. Emily Watson. I mean, this thing, I think it's an excellent project. I've talked to several people on it. I went to a party with Zach last Monday night for it, and they took over half a block in Westwood. So all of these networks and studios are very much campaigning. Limited series is a place where they can really not only get nominations and wins across the board, but they rely on these, especially these, because they are basically movies or extended movies for overseas. If it's like, if I could slap a label on there and say Genius is an Emmy winner, or American Crime, or Fargo, or whatever it is, that creates massive sales overseas.
It's interesting this year because last year, I think everyone agreed that it was going to be People versus O.J. Simpson. I mean, there was not any other competition as great as everything else was that was nominated last year. This year, I keep switching my predictions between the 5 that I have in there right now, which is Feud, Night Of, Big Little Lies, Fargo, and Genius. I can honestly see any of those 5 winning this.
And I was going to Tom about Feud. I mean, because it's so Ryan Murphy, who does this the intensive look at OJ, race in the 90s, and really scorching kind of look at it, and really so well acted. Now he's given us Feud, which tell everyone what, if they haven't been lucky enough to watch it, Feud, why they should be watching Feud.
Right. There's a very selfish reason for Emmy voters to go for this in the same way that they went for OJ, because a lot of the Emmy voters knew OJ. I mean, he's a Hollywood fixture, and Feud, of course, is about what happened to Bette Davis and Joan Crawford throughout their career, but primarily during the filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. It is magnificent. It's Ryan Murphy at the top of his talents. It is about Hollywood and the darkest side, and it gets to such a deep emotional level that it really, really hits you in the gut. My fear with the show is that it certainly will be nominated, and I think it can win, but I'm hesitant off the bat to predict it to win because of its camp factor. And that's what hurt, I think, La La Land at the Oscars. And that's what we had overestimated the La La Land, because it was just just extravagantly camp. And that's exactly what Feud is. And sometimes the cool, gritty crowd of Hollywood rebels against that. It'll certainly do well in the acting categories and will probably even win there. But I don't know if it's there'll be a backlash and it will be hurt there. Big Little Lies is the class act, and that is the prestige thing that with that cast, and it had great buzz and looks like, you know, an Oscar showcase as well. So that is really, really a player. And in terms of what genius and what Chris was just saying, remember, that's the Fox studio. I'm not this song's going to win. Jeffrey Rush can win there on the acting side, but but when Hollywood gets behind these things, remember the heft of the studio. So the same studio that gave us OJ last year on FX, which is Fox, is also behind Genius. And so these things really matter.
Feud, yes, Feud was campy, but I think Feud had a huge heart to it, especially that final episode was just devastating. Mm-hmm. And I think people maybe go into it thinking it's going to be campy and silly and ridiculous, but once they actually sit down to watch it, it's very, very good and very, you know, for someone like me that didn't really know who these ladies were or about their feud at all, it was very accessible.
It's also probably
Hollywood. You know, the other thing about Feud that's in its favor is you could make a really strong case it's going to win 3 acting awards. When is the last time something won 3 acting awards and didn't win series, limited series or mini series in the older days? Because Jessica Lange or Susan Sarandon could certainly win. Alfred Molina could certainly win. He's got a very hefty role. They almost even considered him a lead. It's so hefty. A very emotional role. And then Judy Davis, they love at the Emmys. I could see her winning. So, you know, that's a strong possibility.
It's also probably going to get the most nominations of any show.
Because it's a period piece, right, Zach? I mean, Zach, who does all those dozens and dozens of interviews with the below the line people. I mean, you talk to these people about the care and attention that they dedicate to the recreation, say, for instance, of the Oscar ceremony.
They even have before you answer, Zach. Let me give a shot. I think if I'm right about this, they even had the exact nail polish that Joan Crawford wore at the Oscars, and they put it onto Jessica Lange in Feud.
No, I mean, you really cannot take for granted the massive scope of what they did in this show, recreating not just the Oscars, which is a tour de force episode, but Joan Crawford's house, Bette Davis's house, you know, these sets for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, just about a good decade's worth of period detail and costumes and hair and makeup. You know, the detail that went into this is really immaculate. So, I mean, multiple nominations across the board for production design, costumes. You know, I don't see how it is not the most nominated, not just limited series, but possibly the most nominated show in any category.
Possibly the most wins at the Creative Arts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see what it's going to beat for below the line categories. The music as well, by Matt Quayle, who I just interviewed. You know, the opening title sequence is fantastic.
Oh, so that's really great.
Yeah.
Now, I know that they got along, Jessica Lange and Susan Sarandon. I know they got along. I understand that. But couldn't we see a little? We'll want a feud at the Emmys, right? Because there's some interesting Emmy history, like with those two women, right, Chris?
Emmy history?
Well, in the sense that one of them has.
Oh yeah, Jessica Lange has 3 wins already, and Susan's been up a few times, but has never won one before.
Yeah, and Jessica Lange's got 2 Oscars. Kind of, it's funny. Jessica Lange played Joan Crawford, who only had 1 Oscar, but she herself has 2. And Sarandon plays Bette Davis, who had 2 and was desperate to be the one with the first one to get 3. And Sarandon only has 1 Oscar, but no Emmy to keep her Oscar company. So if Tom, I'm going to really put you on the spot here. So you're an Emmy voter. So you won't be voting in that category because.
I want to hear. I want to see the email you get from Ryan Murphy after this.
so I think Tom, what you should say is you would vote for either Nicole Kidman or Reese Witherspoon for Big Little Lies.
No. I got in a big debate the other day with an actual Emmy voter from the acting branch who was saying that. Well, we've seen that Jessica Lange stuff, the big, gothic dark performance stuff. That's all, same old stuff. But come on, the voters are suckers for famous people portraying other famous people. We see it all the time at these awards. She's got that going for her, as does Susan Sarandon, of course. But as the show progresses in those final 3 episodes, I think there are 8 in all. It's the Joan Crawford show, and we see her wounded heart and her broken soul just all over the place, and she is just magnificent. And it is. I feel bad for Susan Sarandon as the show goes on, because obviously, dramatically, they had to kind of go to the Joan Crawford character. But this voter said she's still going to vote for Susan Sarandon and disagrees with everything I say.
I'll tell you what, though, and this is not going to happen, but if Susan had gone supporting, they could both win Emmys. I couldn't see it flipped. I could not see Jessica Lange going supporting with her role. She had the much bigger role, especially those final 3 episodes. Susan Sarandon's character was almost a guest star in those final 3.
And that last episode where spoiler alert, Joan Crawford is no longer with us, but I mean,
She's dead?
Yeah, what do you know about that? Yeah, I mean, it really is, that last episode is all about Jessica Lange. I mean, Susan Sarandon's great in it, don't get me wrong, but, you know.
So now what about, so you've got those Oscar winners of a certain generation. Now, what about, as I mentioned before, Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman for Big Little Lies? Daniel, I mean, what do you think one of those relative youngsters could come along? And I mean, they are hot movie careers coming to television. You know, I mean, that as opposed to Jessica Lange and Susan Sarandon, who make more TV than films these days. Do Emmy voters embrace that, or will they say, "Oh, you're just slumming it until the next big movie"?
I think we're past the point of thinking that movie stars are slumming it on TV. So I don't think they'll be hurt by that. I think if there were just one of them, and I'm not advocating that either of them should have gone supporting. I think these are both basically lead performances. But if it was just one of them, that they could capitalize on a potential vote split of the Feud actresses, because now there's a plurality vote. You don't rank the nominees, and so if you really liked Feud, you could have put in previous years Sarandon 1, Lange 2, or Lange 1, Sarandon 2, and so that no matter how that splits, one of them ends up winning. But now they just have to pick one or the other, and so that Feud camp is just going to be split. But then the Big Little Lies camp is also going to be split. So some is going to go to Reese Witherspoon, some is going to go to Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman might be seen as a slightly more prestigious actress. She has 4 Oscar nominations. She's just coming off of one for Lion this past year. And it really seems like as that show went along, especially towards those later episodes, that Nicole Kidman was really getting the lion's share of adulation for the show. So if they go somewhere, it might be her. But it's still a very even split. I can see a lot of people going for Reese Witherspoon. So, in case of 2 programs that could split the vote, I think Feud is more likely to succeed because Jessica Lange, as we've mentioned, does have the meatier, showier, more screen time role.
I'll tell you what, though, the fact that David E. Kelley is the one that wrote the scripts for Big Little Lies, don't count out any of those actresses. Even on the supporting side, Shailene Woodley is going supporting, and Laura Dern. Over his career as a writer and a producer, he has won 30 different people Emmy Awards, and some of those were multiple winners. So over
in acting alone.
Yes, and of those 30, some won more than one. So the total actually is 38 trophies he has won for people just by writing their dialogue.
And all 4 ladies you've all just mentioned, Nicole, Reese, Jessica, Susan, should their projects win limited series, they're producers. So they could get their Emmys that way this year as opposed to on the acting side, or both. And Oprah's a producer on hers. So it's going to be, the ladies are taking over limited series, that's for sure.
Right, because in the case of Oprah, it's a television film. And then I can't help but think of David E. Kelley's wife, Michelle Pfeiffer, who's in something coming up on HBO. She plays Ruth Madoff in The Wizard of Lies opposite De Niro. I think she's going supporting. So because the performance categories mix people in limited, and then there aren't that many TV movies made anymore. So what a powerhouse category that is, though, right? As you just mentioned, Oprah for that really wonderful film on HBO. It's just it's an embarrassment of riches. What about Daniel? I think you were a big fan of Night Of. weren't you? Last summer, though. Is it?
The night of, by the way, before you answer that, Daniel, actually leads the combined odds for Gold Derby as the winner of this category. You think that's because the predictions are old, probably, and the newer predictions haven't phased in. But do you think that could happen? Could it win?
It could. It will really have to make a showing in those nominations, though. It aired a while back, so it might be out of sight, out of mind. And I'm just having these, and I loved the night of it. It's probably of what I've seen so far, my favorite of the limited series contenders. But I have these dreadful flashbacks to Show Me a Hero last year, which aired at around the same time as the night of did. It had a similarly strong pedigree. It had Paul Haggis behind it and David Simon. And this the night of is made by Steve Zalian. So it has that prestige, and it got nothing. Last year, it got 0 Emmy nominations, and it was heartbreaking. So I'm concerned that the night of, I'm predicting it to be nominated. I'm not predicting it to win. I have Feud winning. I'm just hoping that this is not like a night of bubble that's going to burst on Emmy nominations.
But could it do well in the acting nominations? And like, Daniel, who do you think is going to win actor in a limited series or TV movie?
Right now, I have that between Robert De Niro and Jeffrey Rush. I've got Robert De Niro in a top spot at the moment. It's the big movie star Oscar winner does this TV project, and he and Jeffrey Rush both have that working in their favor, and that happens a lot. I do have both Riz Ahmed and John Turturro being nominated. Of course, if they're both nominated, they'll be nominated against each other. So there's another situation of a potential vote split. I think Michael K. Williams could get in supporting. I think Jeannie Berlin potentially could get in supporting. Bill Camp. These are respected character actors. They've been working a lot. Michael K. Williams has been nominated before. So it has a shot at a lot of nominations. But it also could be on the bubble for very many of those and miss out in a lot of places where it could have been close.
And you're missing Ian McGregor, you forgot to mention, who's got the 2 roles in Fargo, which is, they love, if you play twins, it gets 2 performances for the price of 1 vote. And of course, Benedict Cumberbatch, you cannot underestimate Sherlock anymore in these races, as we have learned in the past.
What do you guys think about?
A long time, and of course, none of us have seen Robert De Niro, but now that I've seen some of Fargo, you're right, Tom. I mean, and these twins are so different. I mean, vastly different. I think Ewan McGregor might win this thing.
Yeah, I agree.
He would be the first Fargo actor. The first 2 seasons, I think it has 8 nominations for acting, but no one's won yet. Not even Gene Smart, who was a lock last year.
I know.
Well, and that really is, again, I always say this about us being experts. Last year was the first year of the new voting system. Just check off one name. So yeah, it did kind of take us aback to realize that, yeah, we have to figure out who's the most, like, it's a popular vote. So who's the most popular in the group?
Well,
the thing about De Niro and I'm sorry. The thing about De Niro and his film is whatever HBO slots in for that last weekend of the year is something they're very high on. It happens every single year. Last year was Bryan Cranston and his movie. Almost every year they do that. So they know internally what they have. We haven't seen it. All the experts haven't seen it. So it's Barry Levinson, Oscar winner for Rain Man, who's done a lot of television the last decade or more. It could be really, really good.
Yeah, and he's won Emmys before, I think, for his TV movies. So,
Tom, you were going to say something.
I forgot what it was.
Oh. Well, that's why we keep doing slugfests. So he'll remember, and the next time we revisit this, after we've done a few more of these things and more episodes of Fargo, which you're right is really fun to watch, and those twins. I couldn't help but think, Tom, of you did write that first and best book about Emmys. Twins, as in Lindsay Wagner pulling off an upset for Bionic Woman, right? I mean, right. Like this.
For best drama actress. I mean, just not even comedy actress. It's one of the most infamous wins in the history of the Emmys. Is how did Lindsay Wagner win best drama actress for the Bionic Woman? And it wasn't the days when you submitted one episode to a judging panel that convened in a hotel room that was monitored by Academy officials, and you had to sit there and mark your ballot and rank it. And we saw a lot of big upsets like that. I just remembered what I was going to say, which was Chris had made some comment about popularity of actors, or maybe you did, Paul. And that's not a factor. What we learned last year with the new voting is that that Ben Mendelsohn can win. And we go, well, what was that all about? I understand the Tatiana Maslany win because she had, talk about multiple personalities, multiple characters. She had about 55 and is not in the running again this year. But Ben Mendelsohn was dead, off the show, and just came back and went in some kind of dream sequences, was it, or something? And somehow won. Unbelievable.
He was the biggest film star in that group.
Oh, okay.
Where some of these limited series categories we're talking about, they're just loaded with film stars, so we can't use that as an excuse. Can I just mention 2 other limited series that we just shouldn't totally sleep on, mainly because of who's behind them. Gorilla, Showtime rarely does movies or miniseries anymore, and they've got this one that's airing right now called Gorilla, and it is produced by Idris Elba, who the industry loves, and he's a supporting actor in it. So with it being the only thing Showtime has in the category, that can help sometimes. The same goes for who's the biggest giant in the industry right now in terms of quantity of project and also quality overall and spending, and that's Netflix. The only limited series they have, and that's because they were campaigned for it internally to get moved over, is Gilmore Girls. I don't see Gilmore Girls getting a lot of nominations. It's never been nominated really for anything other than like one non-genre specific category way back. Like, what was it, Jack? Maybe like hairstyling.
Non-prosthetic makeup. It won. Its only win and its only nomination.
With it being Netflix's only limited series.
How did you know that, Daniel?
I've been writing about and editing articles about Gilmore Girls for months, and so I have memorized. It was for the episode of the Festival of Living Art where they were recreating these artworks. So one Emmy nomination, one win for Gilmore.
This thing, which came out at Thanksgiving, was hugely popular. I think people have discovered it over the years since it actually aired on Netflix and other places. So don't be, I mean, it would not be shocking to me if it claimed that 5th slot.
There needs to be more than 5 slots, doesn't there? There needs to be 6 or 7 limited.
And there could be if the vote
now.
If the vote's close, there could be. I mean, we had some of those supporting actress a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Every woman that ever worked in Hollywood nominated. I mean,
there was 8.
Yeah.
Limited series could go to 6 easily, and they could just, if they were worried about filling up the seats, they could just go to movie on 3 or 4. I mean, there's only like 12 that are going to be on the ballot of any substance.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is always fun. We've kicked it off, and we'll just keep doing these because there's so much to talk about in the next couple of months. So.